Good morning, everyone. This is Will from Next Big Fight. This morning I've got with me Dan and James. Dan, how are you, mate?
I'm good, thank you, Will.
James, how you doing?
I'm okay, Will.
Good stuff, good stuff. Well, we've got some key big talking points this weekend. We'll start with the return of Groves. Dan, you were at the Copper Box last night. What did you make of the atmosphere, first and foremost?
Yeah, good atmosphere. It's, as I said, it was a complete sellout, considering George Groves' name. But good to see him back. And onwards and upwards, really. It was the result I expected from him.
Okay, before we move on to the result, a lot was made of Groves' return, the comeback. Eddie Hearn, by his own admission, stated that it wasn't a sellout. Why do you think that was? Do you think it's a case of Groves potentially losing his fan base, or the fact that it was the first Matchroom show after Christmas and funds were a little bit tight for most?
Well, I think pretty much most of the above. Any show in January is generally a hard one to sell. Maybe case, I think he still has quite a solid fan base, George Groves, after the Fudge fights. And, I think the opponent wasn't really what people were, even though it was, let's face it, a rebuilding fight, it wasn't the kind of opponent people willing to spend a lot of money on.
Okay. And James, yourself, what did you make of the first Matchroom show of the year? Was it what you expected?
Yeah, it was okay. Let's just say that.
Apart from the ban that was giving Dan a headache during the fight, what did you make of the bill as a whole? James, you still there?
All right, sorry, were you talking to me then?
Yes. So I was saying that Dan was tweeting throughout the course of the fight saying that the ban was doing his head in. But apart from that, what did you think of the bill as a whole?
Yeah, like I said, it was an okay build. There was a few good, average fights, to be honest with you. I don't think anything last night was that great, though, to be honest with you, boxing-wise, but that's just my opinion. But I felt sorry for Dan, to be honest with you, with that ban going off the whole night.
Yeah.
That must have been annoying, like being out of England.
I think Groves is going to lose more fans over that one.
The fan base is falling. Dan, let's talk about the fight now. So it was Groves' first comeback fight with new trainer Shane McGuigan. First fight since the loss to Badu Jack over the summer. What did you make of Groves' performance, Dan?
Well, I think the thing I noticed mostly was the jab. I think that was, something even the Sky team were making a big point about. He was always in control. Good jab. I think the problem was that the other guy didn't seem to be really up for the job. So we could really tell really he needed more improvements other than that. But no, he looks good, and I think needs to step up really for potential fight in April, I'm hearing.
Well, that's the hope. What about yourself, James? What did you make of Groves' performance? Was it a little bit of the Groves of the past, or did you see improvements there?
No, it looks similar to the way he's been fighting the last few fights. I mean, we were all expecting him to come back out on me and show that old style that he had, that stalker style that he used to have before the Froch fight, well, going into the first Froch fight. Well, like Dan said, that's something I noticed, the jab. The jab looked really sharp last night, but the opponents, it was a good comeback fight, and you could see, like, Haye's match-up the other day, same sort of thing. He was way out of his league, the guy. Some of the punches he threw, he was missing by miles and falling over and everything, trying to hit a punch. But
yeah, I'd have to agree with you there, James. The opponent was carefully selected, very likely to make Groves look good, and the fact that he was starting off with a new trainer in the same way that Haye was, it was important to get a good test, but not too much of a test. Now, I'll come to you first, Dan. What did you make of Groves' comments about Paddy and the perceived lack of trust there. Do you think they were fair comments, or do you think Groves is going a little bit too in on Paddy and not taking enough responsibility himself?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was a bit harsh, just to say the least. I think some things should be left unsaid, really. You could sort of see really that the Paddy Groves situation didn't really gel. But no, very harsh. He had to take a lot of responsibility for that. But it was sort of, with the Adam Booth situation, there was kind of where nothing was said there. There was a lot of loose things in the gym, but I think he was very, with Paddy, he was a bit unfair.
Yeah. Well, the same question to you, James. And before you answer, and for the benefit of the listeners, we interviewed Paddy, I think it was about a week ago, and please do check out the interview. It's the 6th podcast. And he says words to the effect of, it was a lot of the problems were caused by Groves' arrogance. He describes a scenario a month before the Badou Jack fight when Groves went to visit Paddy in his home in America, and Paddy was astonished that Groves was annoyed with him, and when Paddy asked why, Groves' response was, "Well, Paddy, it's because you think that Badou Jack is a good fighter." And that was an astonishing statement from Groves, but that gives us a little bit of insight into this notion of Groves being arrogant. And Paddy's view, and of course listen to the pod, is that Groves appeared a little bit unwilling to listen to Paddy's instruction. Maybe there was a lack of trust or a lack of respect there. But James, what are your thoughts on the situation and Groves constantly blaming Paddy for his previous failures?
It's got nothing to do with Paddy. It's his own fault. It's all his own doing, isn't it? Let's be honest. We were talking about this last night on the page. He was saying about his arrogance. Yeah, all boxers are arrogant. I get that, but there's a good arrogance and there's a bad arrogance. And before the first Ross fight, he had a good arrogance about him, but he never underestimated his opponent. Afterwards, the bad arrogance started kicking in, where he underestimated his opponent, and he basically thinks he's won a fight before it's even started. I think that's what happened with Froch, the second fight, and that's what happened with Jack. He's not putting the work in anymore. That's it.
Well, we'll see what happens. And Dan, do we think the relationship with Shane will be a fruitful one?
Yeah, we'll take what we said. I mean, that's a very unusual comment, that saying that Jack was a good fighter. I mean, he is a good fighter. So I don't know,
Yeah, I think the point that Paddy was trying to make was Groves really underestimated Jack. He was surprised that Paddy thought Jack was a good fighter, and as you said, astonishing comment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say about that, really. I think George also got to a bit of a stage where he had an ego, and he was going to pretty much do things his own way. Didn't happen for him, the Jack fight. One would have thought he was going to beat Jack. It was close, but it went the light winner. But yeah.
So by that token, does Groves need that type of trainer, a strong trainer that will dictate to him, someone in the form of Shane McGuigan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, seeing a couple more fights time, how they gel, but I think Shane McGuigan is a very good trainer.
Sorry, just to butt in here, sorry. Will Shane have that authority though? I mean, outside of Frampton, who else has he trained? Do you think he'll have that authority over Groves?
This is why I think a couple more fights and you'll get an idea. I mean, he's a young trainer, isn't he? So he's making his mark now in the game. So
well, it was interesting when Shane was interviewed after the fight and was asked to give a rating on George's performance in front of George, in front of the viewers, and he marked him as a 7 out of 10. Maybe that's just Shane laying a marker that Groves will have to trust him, and he's the boss.
Well, yes, but I think Shane he's pretty good trainer, but you also got to realise that with his dad in the corner, I think he takes a lot of info from him as well.
Absolutely, he's got the benefit of that experience, but in Shane's credit, he's got three massive personalities, characters there in the form of Frampton, Groves and Haye, and if they appear all willing to listen to him, that's testament to Shane. Now let's talk about potential opponents, and we'll start with you, James. Groves looking to be out as soon as possible, potentially on this April card for Matchroom. Who would we like to see him face, James?
Well, this is another one I was talking about last night. I think it's got to be Martin Murray. That's got to be his next fight. But everyone's saying he needs a couple more tests. He needs to just take his time and that.
Well, let me ask this question in that case. I would actually agree that maybe he needs a couple more fights before he goes on to fight for world honours and fights world level fighters in the ilk of Martin Murray. So wouldn't someone like Rocky Fielding be a good option for April?
Yeah, I suppose so. Rocky wouldn't be a bad option for him, but Rocky want to go straight into that sort of fight after just coming off a first round knockout. Because if he goes in with Groves and gets beat again, where does he go after that? So it's one of them.
Well, it may well be that Hearn throws the lamb to slaughter there.
No, I don't think you can do that to the lad. No, what I mean, he's young, he's still an up and comer. You've got to let him rebuild. I think it's a different scenario with Groves because he has fought at that level, and it's not like he was beaten up by Jack. He lost a close decision. I think he needs to get back on it as soon as possible. To be honest with you, I don't think he needs to take the baby steps that some boxers need to do. Say like David Price and other ones that have done it. I think at this point, Martin Murray's the same. He's lost 4 title fights. Rose has lost 3. Let's see them.
But on that note, James, would that not be a make or break fight for both of them? Martin Murray with his 4 failed world title shots, and Groves with his 3. Where would the loser go back from there?
Well, they just slip out of the picture early, wouldn't they? But I think that's where both of them are at now. They've both lost numerous title fights, so I think this is where both of them need to go.
Okay.
I've got to be honest, if you're talking about the fight who's going to win in that, I'd say Groves, but I wouldn't say he'd knock him out because Martin Murray is very tough. He's a big heart. So
he does have a lot of heart. He's challenged at world level. Dan, is that the fight that you think is right for Groves next?
Well, probably not the next fight, because I can see what James is saying. But I think what we were saying about McGregor, I'd like to see maybe. I think the Martin Murray fight will happen later in the year, but with the new partnership with the McGregors, maybe they'll want to have another fight or two, working a few aspects. But maybe someone like Patrick Nielsen would be a good fight.
It's a good shout.
He's with the Sauerlands, I believe he's with the Sauerlands.
Is he still unbeaten, is it?
Sorry?
Is he still unbeaten, is it?
No, I think he lost one last year.
All right. Yeah, that'd be one.
Yeah, I mean, it's something like that. I'd like to see that. And Martin Murray potentially for a late summer fight. That's kind of, in a sense, to me, an eliminator anyway for one of them to go on to a world title. But yeah, the Murray fight, I think, is one that a lot of people like to see. I'd like to see it.
Well, there's a few options there by the looks of it, and listening to Groves' post-fight interview, he does want to be out as quickly as possible, maybe against a bigger test. Now, what about the rest of the card? What did we make of that? We'll come to you first, James. Sergei Kamitsky, John Ryder. What did you make of that fight?
It was. I'm trying to put a good spin on it, but it was just one of them. It was just a run-of-the-mill fight. It was a close fight and the correct decision at the end of it. Ryder won on points, but you could see he needed to get in more, get on the inside because. I can't say his name, sorry.
Kamitsky
can't get. He's got no inside skills, has he? So we should have been trying to get in more. But it was one of them. It was a close fight, and I'd say Ryder won on just on points.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very surprised by Ryder's tactics. He seemed to be complete devoid of a defence. He was getting hit very easily. He was leaving his hand very, very low, and he was getting caught. He was fighting almost a pensioner in Kamitsky there, and I thought he did well to win. A lot has been made of the potential of Ryder, and I didn't see too much of that. It will be interesting to see how Hearn matches him up next. But Dan, what was your take on Ryder's performance?
I thought he boxed well. There was always, with that setback against Nick Blackwell, I think he was given credit for taking that fight after Kamitsky. He's beaten 3 good fighters on his shores before. I think it was the right fight to take. Otherwise, it was a potential banana skin as well, and which could have really derailed him. But with the cut he suffered, I think he really boxed well off the back of that to get the pace of the fight and run it out really. But yeah, towards the end, Kamitsky was not giving anything back really. But good win.
Good, absolutely great win for Ryder, and it'll be interesting to see how Hearn matches him up next. Now,
I think maybe they should look at the rematch with Blackwell. That's if Blackwell gets past them.
Well, after he faces Chris Eubank, yeah.
Well, that fight has fallen below the radar, James. The Eubank against Blackwell fight. Sorry, Dan?
Or is it still happening? Because there doesn't seem to be much coverage for it.
Well, it's interesting that you should say that. I was listening to Kugi Bear's interview of Hearn from last night, and he mentioned that there have been some talks with Eubank, and given that the lack of talk about the Blackwell Eubank fight, I wouldn't rule out Eubank just not fighting Blackwell, and that would pave the way for Blackwell to have a rematch with Ryder. What would you think of that fight, James?
Yeah, that'd probably be the right move to go for, the right fight to go for next, because I don't think Chris Eubank should be going for that sort of fight with Blackwell. He's a level above that. Well, actually, he's a couple of levels above that. These fighters you're talking about, they're about British level, aren't they? That's where they're going to stay. They're not going to go any further than that, to be honest with you. So it's a good next step.
Okay, now before we move on to our next topic of Kovalev against Pascal, I'll come to you first, Dan. Overall, a good card last night. I know there were some notable wins for Leon McKenzie, first round KO, and a very good fight in Hibbert against Martin. You were happy, value for money there, Dan?
It wasn't too bad. There was a few fights that were mismatches, but otherwise it all depends how much money you want to spend on the card itself. But yeah, pretty good value for money.
Would you say the stoppage of Martin was correct, or referee jumped in too early?
Of who, sorry?
Martin, he seemed to get up at the count of 10. Referee waved it off. Correct decision?
Oh,
It's just sort of type on it.
Yeah, it was tough to one stage to tell really. I think he slightly misjudged it.
I mean, exactly the same thing happened in the McKenzie fight. Is it just a case of fighters not understanding the rules, or are they just looking for that extra second to reserve their energies?
I think it's a case of maturity for him really. I think he was just the need to buy some time. He just totally misjudged it. He seemed fine to me when he got up, but just a bad lapse of concentration really. Shame for him really, but
yeah. Hopefully both fighters
I don't think it would have made a difference though, would it? I think
he was losing anyway.
Yeah, well, let's move on to the Kovalev Pascal 2 fight last night, and we'll come to you first, James. Now, I saw a tweet yesterday which was absolutely hilarious, which suggested that even Pascal had stuck a tenner on Kovalev knocking him out. Was that always the result that everyone was going to see, a Kovalev knockout, James?
Well, I get the point of why he activated the rematch clause. I just can't figure this out. I mean, obviously, you're going to say a payday, yeah. But why activate it? I mean, Butte didn't add the rematch clause there for Froch. He didn't activate it. So why did he activate it? It was only going to end one
Well,
way.
was it just a case of...
more of a worse beating than it was first
I mean,
time.
wasn't it just a case of Kovalev running out of opponents that wanted to face him? Pascal seemed willing. They offered him the amount that Pascal thought would be the right amount to fight Kovalev, and the fight happened.
Suppose so, but I think it's not good for boxing, in my opinion. It's not good to have these sorts of fights, and no one's interested. You know what I mean? I've got to admit, I wanted to get up and watch it, and then I did try to get up, but then I thought, why am I getting up to watch this at 4 a.m. when I know the outcome already? I know what's going to happen.
Okay.
If I'm going to get up and watch a fight, I want to see a fight.
A proper fight. Well, on that note, James, what did you make of Kovalev's performance?
Yeah, he done what he had to do. It's usual sort of style, but I noticed a couple of things that I thought, you know what, I think Stevenson, his style is perfect for him. I think he could beat him, but that might not be a popular opinion, but styles make fights, and you can see he's very uncomfortable when punches are coming at him, and he's not good on the back foot. And another thing, this is questionable, this bit, is I'm not sure he's got a chin. I think he gets caught with a good punch, he'll be out.
Well, that's an interesting point you make. He did get tagged a couple of times, and he doesn't like getting hit. I think that's clear for everyone to see. One thing that I also found is he does throw a lot of single shots, Kovalev, not too many combinations, and that might be the reason he doesn't want to expose that chin of his. Throwing the single shots is safer. Dan, what did you make of Kovalev's performance? And would you like to see a fight with Stevenson?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, that's the fight outside of Andre Ward. I think the two fights he needs to be chasing now. I mean, I'm with James that it was a pointless fight. Seeing the nature of the first win, when I saw it last night, he was just breaking down Pascal for every single shot he was throwing. But obviously on Pascal, I can't see. He obviously has Freddie Roach in his corner now. Couldn't see any kind of any difference in the way he was fighting. But he was.
If anything, he was worse.
Yeah, I thought he was worse. I don't know what happened to Pascal. Maybe he was a bit apprehensive, but he did catch actually Kovalev with a couple of times, and which probably goes to the point you were saying about his chin. Did threaten him a couple of times, but otherwise it was one-way traffic. Again, a pointless fight, but we didn't really learn or anything else.
Yeah, he got the victory that everyone expected him to get. Now, James, do you think that the Stevenson fight happens next, or do you think Kovalev will fight the rumoured Andre Ward, providing Andre Ward comes to his next fight? Apparently, it's already signed. Andre Ward just needs to win.
Yeah, I've heard that myself, that's going to happen. But honestly, like I've said, not on against Ward. I like what he does. He is a great fighter, and apart from the power, he's got everything. But he's not good to watch, is he?
Are you saying that? Are you saying that he's not good to watch, James? Are you saying that you're a casual and not a boxing purist?
You've got me with that one, to be honest.
Because I think he's technically beautiful. I mean, I love the technically gifted fighters. I get the impression James goes for the ones that go for the knockout. But in all seriousness, James, do you think that the Andre Ward fight happens? And if it were to happen, how would you see it panning out?
I think the Andre Ward fight can happen, and it will happen. This is another one where I'm going against the grain a bit. I think Kovalev will beat him. I think he'll overwhelm him with his power, but it's a very tough fight, on his day. You could make a claim for him right now that he's pound for pound best fighter out there now, with Floyd not being around. He's got everything, can he? He's got the inside game, he's got the outside game. He's quite powerful, but he's just powerful in the sense he could literally throw you around, but I don't think he's got power in the shots. I mean, it's a bit
It's interesting debate there. I mean, Kovalev does have the brute power. His record speaks for itself. But Andre Ward is unbeaten. Dan, how would you see that fight panning out if it made?
I really like that fight. I think, I know James is saying he's not really explosive box office kind of fighter, but I think he's an exceptional talent. I think he neutralises everyone else's strongest assets in the fights he's involved in. Well, I think though that fight, the styles will just gel really well. And it'll just be. I think I'd just see Ward maybe just stealing that fight. But at this stage. So I think
just interrupting here, sorry. Out of the two, right, Kovalev Ward and Kovalev Stevenson, which one would you want to see? And if we put that to a vote, what do you reckon about?
That's a very, very good question, and I think we will put that on a vote. If you're asking me, I would personally like to see Ward Kovalev. The reason being, I think with Kovalev Stevenson, Kovalev will just walk him down. He really will. He'll walk him down and he'll stop him. I would be surprised if I don't rate Stevenson's defensive skills, and I think he's got stamina issues. I think Kovalev stops him middle to late, and with Ward, he's got an incredible engine on him. His footwork is amazing, his defense is amazing, and I think he would win a relatively comfortable points win. Which of the two would you like to see, Dan? Same question.
I'd go for the Ward fight personally. The Stevenson fight, I think pretty much you've covered it. I could probably see anything really it'll be a highly competitive fight. Stevenson's a very powerful southpaw. No, I don't think one that really will be a too tough fight for Kovalev. I think the Ward fight right now is the one that I'd go for.
It's definitely a north against south this today.
Well, on that note, we'll move on. We'll move on to the fourth and final talking point, which is the April and May dates for AJ and Haye. David Haye's recently come out and confirmed that the May fight is already signed and sealed. Opponent yet to be announced, but it will take place at the O2 on May the 21st. You've got AJ fighting April 9th. Opponent to be revealed next week. We'll start with you, Dan, and we'll start with Haye. Who are we expecting Haye to fight? Who do you think's likely to be in the mix?
Do you know what I think? Judging by the social media activity, I think Malik Scott could get the call. He's more than willing to come over. I don't think he'll price himself out. He's a name that not just hardcore but casual fans will probably know. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Maybe it'll be a big disappointment to people. It does end up being Scott, judging on the back of the Chisora and Wilder defeats. But I think that's the one we could be seeing in May.
Well, he's a ranked fighter. We also interviewed Malik Scott last week, and he was very vocal about the fact he wants Haye, he wants Joshua, he wants the big fights. James, would that be a good fight for Haye, Malik Scott?
Yeah, I think it is. I think we're maybe being a bit harsh on Malik Scott, to be honest with you. Throw out the Wilder fight. That was just what it was.
Is it not? James, sorry, James. Is it not a case of fans losing faith in Malik Scott, given the manner of the defeats against Chisora, against Wilder? Does he not have the bottle?
Yeah, to be honest with you, you could say that he doesn't have the bottle, but the Chisora one was dodgy. He got up at 9. That wasn't a 10 count. Why did the referee stop it? The referee just went 9 and then just waved it off for 4. He was obviously just giving himself time to recover, and at that point, Malik Scott was winning the fight. Chisora was coming back, don't get me wrong, but at the time, Malik Scott was winning it, and with his movements and his boxing skills, it's a good test.
Okay.
I think it's what he needs.
Well, we'll see if Malik Scott gets the call, and hopefully the opponent should be announced next week.
On that, sorry, I can't see David Haye really hanging around at British level fighting British level fighters. I just think he wants. Malik's got a good name. He's got quite a good ranking, and obviously with the win over Tony Thompson recently, I think that could be the ideal route he'll take. It might not please everyone, but I wouldn't be
I expect him to get to the top after like one fight against Amore, and he can't, like you said, Dan, he can't hang around. He hasn't got age on his side. No,
that's what I mean. And I think I see a lot of people say, look, why not fight Dillian Whyte? See, Dillian's in recovery at the moment, but it's still Haye's 36 this year. I think he'll just want to take the quickest route possible, and I think Scott just fits the bill.
I think Dillian Whyte is similar to like Rocky Field, and you can't be throwing him in with fighters like David Haye and George Groves. It's just you just want them to not have any career at all.
Dillian will also want a bit. We won't want that fight straight away after recovery. He's got.
Absolutely, I think it would be unfair to expect Dillian to go straight into a David Haye fight after the shoulder surgery and the recuperation. Dan, let's move on to.
Shoulder surgery, did
he? He did, and well, no, there was no Pacquiao excuse, but he did say that he's expecting to be back out in June. So I agree with Dan there. He's probably going to go in with a relatively straightforward opponent and then jump back into the mix. Now let's move on to AJ and his return in April. Hearn has said that they're going to have a press conference next week where they're going to reveal AJ's opponent. Dan, who are we expecting that opponent to be?
Well, I would have said till early this morning that it was no doubt going to be Chisora, but I'm hearing that Chisora's turned it down, and quite a lot of money as well.
I've heard exactly the same, and in fact, Hearn has actually confirmed in a IFL TV interview last night that it definitely won't be Chisora.
Yeah.
So who does that leave next, Dan?
Well, talking 2 months away for this fight, so for April 9th. It will get to how much I want to spend, but at this kind of notice, it's tough to say really. But you know, I think maybe someone, if it's for the European title, which could be sort of a possibility, and Chisora's not fighting, that I'll go to the next.
Well, that's certainly an option if Chisora doesn't want to.
It's all a bit mixed. It's all a bit mixed up. Who's got it? Because I know Tapier's been. Has he been strict? Has he?
Yeah.
Because he's not done on that.
It's vacant. With understand in the rankings, Klitschko and Povetkin were above Joshua in the rankings, but obviously they've got their own world title fights coming up. So that left Chisora as the main challenger, and Joshua was next.
Zacharias, is he up there as well?
He vacated the fight. Sorry, the belt to avoid the Chisora fight. Very strange circumstances, but then that could be an interesting fight. But I don't know how Laney's feels about coming over here with 2 months' notice.
Saying that, if he doesn't want to take the Chisora fight, he's not going to take the AJ fight, is he? No.
Very strange.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few names there for AJ. He could.
Take him.
Takam, yes. I mean, I personally think it will be Takam. A lot of casuals, let's use that term, it's a favourite term of ours, a lot of casuals wouldn't have heard of Takam, but it would be for the IBF eliminator to Charles Martin's belt, and it may well be that Hearn is going down the IBF route and having that world title eliminator for a big massive showdown with Charles Martin in April. Do you think that's the right route to go down, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Carlos Takam's maybe a eliminator for later on in the year. I know people want to rush him, but I'd like to see him fight for the European title if that's still a possibility in April.
Yeah, I'm with you,
it's just one step at a time. He's going the traditional route, British, Commonwealth, now European.
I know you're saying one step at a time, but then you've got the likes of Hearn saying that AJ beats Haye, Fury, Wilder. Already, so is it not a little bit of a contradiction? Do we move him up gradually, or is he good enough to fight these fighters now?
I think he doesn't help with things like that. But Hearn's always going to say things like that. I'd like to see European titles. In 16 fights is a good step up. You know, win that, and then end of the year move on to the likes of Parker. I believe he's in an eliminator position with Joshua for the WBO. Or yeah, as you say, I think the IBF could be possibly the route end of the year. But I can't see Collis Tacken being ready in 2 months' notice.
So James, do you think Hearn goes with a steady fight for AJ in April and doesn't move him up too fast then?
Yeah, it's got what Dan said, spot on. Go for the European belts against, at this point, God knows, because everyone seems to be pulling out of it. But that's a good next fight, to be honest with you. If you just look at it, what he's done, and just ignore what Haye said, it's the right next fight, to be honest with you. You just can't move him along too quickly. He's still got a lot to learn. We've seen that against White.
Well,
that's a good next fight. But
he was
on the flip side, how was that pay-per-view?
Well, this is the balance that Hearn will have to strike, and I personally feel that he will go for a safe fight, but he will still want it pay-per-view, Hearn, so he will probably want to stack up the card. He mentioned last night that he's hoping to add Groves to it, Murray to it, so I think we will just get a stacked card, but a steady fight for AJ in order to justify that pay-per-view.
Yeah. I think they're talking De Gale and Selby as well, aren't they?
De Gale, Selby.
So,
they need General
yeah, so as well, yeah.
Yeah.
It sounded too bad, this.
Well, I think next week will be a key week. Obviously, AJ and Haye should both reveal both their opponents, and we'll have a massive talking point for next week. Lads...
That's not as bad as David Hayes' card, is it? Just to throw that out there.
Well...
David Hayes, to be announced.
Well, I don't want to be... I don't want to be too critical of the undercard, because it was put together by Steve Goodwin, who I've got a lot of respect for, who we interviewed a couple of weeks ago, and it was a shoestring budget, so a lot of the blame has to be put on David Haye for providing such a low budget. But I think it...
Oh, sorry, I meant the next fight. Have you seen the next fight that's been announced?
On that note, I think I saw the tickets went on sale a couple of days ago. It's pretty bad, really, of David Haye to be selling this event without a solid opponent. But I think it's more of a case people are paying for the event than.
Well, I think that's a fair point to make, Dana, and I think it's just an example of how shrewd a businessman David Haye is. He's
and obviously, popular writer he is.
Well, the thing is, he's got in there before Anthony Joshua. The AJ card on April 9th hasn't gone on sale yet. David Haye's gone for a later date, but he's put the tickets on sale before the April the 9th show, so that boxing fans are really left with a choice. Do you go for the David Haye tickets, or do you go for the AJ tickets? Same venue, same sort of time. Most people, in fairness, won't be able to afford both, so he's almost leaning towards his own card, despite the fact that he hasn't announced an opponent. Is this typical David Haye, James?
Yeah, of course. It's got nothing to do with his bank balance, has it? As in, let's be honest, that's what he's come... You keep saying...
Say it, James. Say it. Just say it. He's come back for the money.
He's come back for the money. That's what he's come back for. All this stuff. Oh, I want to fight the best. The best fight out there for me is Anthony Joshua. That's what all the fans want to see. No, that's what your bank balance wants to see. Sorry, just don't come out with bull, because we know what I mean? It's not going to work on us. It might work to a casual, but don't start with none of that. Sorry, I'll have to calm down because the guy...
Sorry, I just want to apologise to all those casuals out there. James didn't mean it. But no, in all seriousness, I think it is clear that one of the main reasons he's come back is financial. We do want to see David Haye in some big fights, and hopefully the Joshua fight, the Fury...